Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Nephio SIG Release meeting for August 8th, 2022. And let's get started. I think most, I wonder if everybody was already in the meeting, the last meeting, but if not, I'll repeat the announcements from there, which are that the TFC met. Let me display that. Display this or this agenda. Okay. So let's see, did I display the right one? Yeah. Okay. So the TSC did meet, and there were a few changes. One is that this they elected a chair. I say we, I wasn't even there. I'm not on the TSC. They elected a chair, Stephen Long from Google. You all know Stephen from the face-to-face. He's out of office today, so he's not here. But going forward, he'll be the chair. We do need a vice chair, and so there are SIG elections. Let me get the wiki link. There are SIG elections for that, so you are welcome to nominate yourself for vice chair if you want. Here it is. I'll put it into the agenda. All right.
A dumb meta question. Why are we calling them SIGs and not work groups? I guess it's just a.
It just comes from Kubernetes.
Shorthand. Yeah. Okay.
That's just the name we use in Kubernetes, and so we used SIG for whatever. I don't know. I don't remember why we decided that. In Kubernetes world, so there's the TSC hasn't defined all this stuff yet, although they're working on that. They're supposed to get together, I think next week, maybe this week, and try and hammer out the documents. So maybe they'll change to working groups. I don't know. But in the Kubernetes world, which is a dramatically larger community, so maybe it doesn't apply here. SIGs are permanent groups that own the code and or policy or something to that effect, whereas the working groups are sort of temporary groups formed to solve specific problems that span across multiple SIGs. So like implement this thing and then it dissolves. That's the structure there. We started with that prior to having any actual official structure. And so if the TSC prefers a different structure, I don't care.
Yeah, it's just more about the name. SIGs and Kubernetes also have the baggage. I mean, you can create a SIG on any topic in Kubernetes. They don't necessarily have to work together. It's a group of people having an interest. In our case, we created these SIGs specifically, and there are exactly 3 now, because this is how we want this project to proceed, and just to separate the interest. So we're not expecting more SIGs to come in.
I mean,
anyway, I think the structure is clear. A dumb question. It's just about the name.
Yeah. Right. Elected chair. I can't spell. Vice chair. Election. Okay. Were there any other announcements that I don't have? Oh, the SIG, not the other 2 SIGs, the SIG platform and SIG automation machinery have been merged into SIG automation, which I will chair. So those are, I think, all the announcements that came out of the TSC. And then, so given that, I think there was, I'll go over a few more things and then I'll open the floor to other people. I had said I would present, I would propose a structure. I haven't sort of explicitly proposed a structure, but I did start actually creating repos because I'm working on a sort of kick the tires proto Nephio demo type of thing. I hesitate to call it anything other than proto or proof of concept, but I can share. If you go to the GitHub, let's see, let me switch what I'm sharing. All right. So previously we had just, and by the way, when I'm sharing like this, I can't always see hands raised. So just, this is a small enough group, just blurt out. Yeah, so what I've ended up doing is creating a Nephio repository that will hopefully house our code. Right now it contains just a license and a README, but the README actually is significant. So what this README does is go through and kind of help you build a proto Nephio environment. Like I said, sort of proof of concept environment that I will be using in the demo. And basically, it's not quite everything you need, or once you do it, you won't know what to do with it. So it's not all that useful yet. But my next steps would be to, as I build out that demo, that scenario, I'll sort of document how you can execute that demo on your own, and the things that I think are of interest in the demo that we can discuss. So that'll be on Wednesday's meeting. I think I should be able to get enough of something done in the next day and a half.
Sorry, I know I keep repeating this point, but you're calling the repo Nephio, and it is very much focused on your demo right now. So we understand it, but I wonder if people outside the project looking in and oh, the first thing they're going to do is go to Nephio on GitHub to see what's going on. Maybe until we actually have a focus on a use case and everything, it might be better to call it something else that wouldn't be potentially confusing to people.
That's fine. That's why I actually originally put this code in there, and I'm like, this is crap code. Like, I don't want this to be called Nephio. So I moved it out to.
I mean, it's under the Nephio organization, so it's clearly part of the project. But instead of calling it Nephio, maybe exactly like controller POC or something like that.
I could just call it Nephio POC or Nephio
Nephio demo.
Yes. Yeah. I can actually do that right now while we're on the call. If you want to watch me do it, I'll have to figure out how to do it. Actually, there's a way to rename the repos, but I think you got to dig into the settings.
Settings. Yeah. I don't think you have permission in this account.
What? Oh yeah, no, I don't. This is my account for test repositories. Okay, yeah, I'll have to do it later. That's fine. I can rename it Nephio demo. I don't care. So what I have so far there is, yeah. Then there'll be packages that go along with it. You probably won't like the names of my packages either, Tal, but the contents of them can change eventually. So the packages are for deploying it, and they sort of. And this is the one that's sort of the one I'll use in my demo. So just as a sort of rough organization, my expectation is that we'll have repos for different controllers, or maybe we'll have one repo for, it's simpler from a sort of tooling standpoint and relevant to this group if we have it's potentially simpler if we have fewer repos, but I guess I kind of would like to leave this to the community how to structure this, and maybe when Steven's back as a chair, he can take more ownership of it. But at least right now, I'm just trying to get something working for the demo. So all of this is changeable, I guess is the point. So like I said, I don't have anything more here. We didn't have any other action items other than that. I think coming out of this, we do have a need. I guess the other big piece I would want to talk about is this discussion about moving all the tooling back to standard Linux Foundation tooling. I think that we're having a number of struggles. Like I said, I think maybe I didn't say, we obviously use the Google tools internally at Google, and they're awesome when you're working within an organization. I'm finding that when you're trying to work across many organizations, they're not as awesome. Because of security constraints and things like that, the sharing and that is quite challenging. So in that sense, the Linux Foundation tools probably will serve us better. So it's sort of up to this group. So I guess if there's no objections, probably what we'll do is next set of meetings. I don't know that it'll happen by Wednesday, but the next set of meetings probably would all move to Zoom and Etherpad and Wiki for notes. Then the question would be, do we move the Google Groups back to groups.io and the calendar to a group? I guess groups.io has calendars too. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is more in line with what Linux Foundation has been doing for all the other projects.
Yeah, when we first started this with Arpit, we sort of thought, oh, this is an opportunity to try out a different suite of tools as an experiment. But I would say the experiment hasn't gone that well because of the sharing issues in particular, or the use case that the Google tools are built around is really in organization functioning with some selective sharing across organizations. And then, of course, the China issue is also part of it.
So John, actually, we at Red Hat, we also use Google tools. And one of the ways I've worked around this exact challenge you mentioned of sharing with other organizations is, unfortunately, sometimes I use a non-Red Hat email, just an @gmail.com user. And suddenly all these problems disappear. But then I think every organization, we have our own rules about sharing stuff and what we can do and can't do. So it's not really an option.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we do too in the Kubernetes. Like I use my personal Gmail account for all my Kubernetes documents, and then I share them with edit privileges back to my Google, because Google won't let me share them publicly. And now I have the Nephio one, which we've been using for this, but then especially with Meet, like having to click admit 1,000 times is painful. And I'm the only one that can do it on Walmart, like only the people, or we have to get people Nephio addresses, and it's a pain. Yeah, Prakash.
So I did have issues. So I use IEEE account, which allows, but now Google has asked me to make sure that I, because the amount of documents that are stored has gone to around 12 gigabyte. Obviously, the 2 gigabyte is the limit on IEEE. So it's not doable in a very large scale. Right. So I am trying to move it out to my own original account. So I do see the problem, but I think Google can come up with something for everybody to solve this as a challenge for the whole providers, for a whole open source project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all test engineers for the Google tools.
What's that, Tina? I couldn't follow.
Oh, no, I mean, I was sorry, the bad joke. I was thinking we are the test engineers for Google Doc and Google Tools. Professional.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, any other things you guys want to discuss, or shall we just give ourselves back 40 minutes and I'll rename this repo for Tal's sake, and we'll I'll start the process, I guess. Seeming there are no objections, I'll start the process of undoing a bunch of work that I did to get everything on back on the Linux Foundation tools.
Yeah. May I comment that the rename thing? I think we don't need to. I mean, you just create a sub repo under the Nephio repo called the Nephio demo, and we keep this Nephio repo. That's one thinking. So you don't want to see this Nephio demo in parallel to the Nephio later on. It should be one of the project or one of the sub repo under the Nephio repo.
It'll be under the Nephio project organization.
I see.
Yeah. We have an organization. So unfortunately, the Nephio organization was taken and hasn't been touched in years. So I have no idea what it is or who has it, and I don't know if there's any. I asked Linux Foundation, is there a process like if you have a trademark or something, can they reclaim it? It doesn't seem to be being used, but that hasn't gone anywhere so far.
Can we see what's the structure of the repo and what's the name of the root?
So we have there's no structure yet to the repo because there's nothing in it. But
Okay.
the Nephio project, this is the Nephio project. Maybe you can't see my.
Yeah, I think I see your mouse. Yeah.
Okay. This is the organization for Nephio. It's github.com/Nephio project, and right now we just have these 4 repos, and we'll change this one because, and later we'll have a Nephio one that has real code in it.
Yeah, you can change this to Nephio demo, and later when we have the code, we can say Nephio source code, something like that, or Nephio code.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Wim?
Yeah, I had a bit of a question, John. I mean, you created a few repos. Could you share a little bit what you were thinking on the content of these repos?
So if you go to the README in the Nephio one, you'll see what's contained in each one.
Because it's mainly Nephio is mainly the KPT, is like all the KPT, all the management server and stuff like that. That's what I saw.
The Nephio packages contains KPT packages that install the Nephio components, and then one package that we'll use for the demonstration, one application package. And then Nephio controller POC contains some code for a proof of concept controller that I'm working on. It's not quite done. That will execute the scenario that's described in that document. And then the Nephio, soon to be Nephio demo repository only contains a README. That's all that's in it right now. And then there'll be maybe a second README around the one README is how to set up the basic platform, and then the second one will be how to execute the demo scenario to like see how the pieces fit together, and that sort of thing. So
yeah, so I was my thought was that Nephio would be setting up the cluster, setting up the management cluster, setting up or having access to the network functions and the CRDs and stuff like that. So that was a bit my thought when I was looking at this. I just wanted to have a bit of a discussion, given that we had a bit of time to see how how you were thinking.
Yeah, so the Nephio, I mean, this is part of this is the discussion we have to have, like what will be in there. So my expectation is that eventually we'll have a bunch of, this is, by the way, also part of my goal over the next couple of weeks is to like start to break down the vague, high-level slideware into some actual components that need to be built. and the code for those components would live in Nephio. We can do it that way. We can alternatively have separate repos for those, so for those individual components, and we can just sort of assemble it all together in the Nephio repo. So it kind of can go either way. The benefit of doing it all in one is that you have one set of tooling you have to maintain from a SIG release perspective, as far as the CI/CD, and you have one set of owners files, and one, it's a little bit less. It's set up a little bit for maybe more rapid development. If you split them out into more repositories, you can sort of execute maybe a little more independently in each of those, but you have to deal with versioning each of those artifacts separately, as opposed to one component, one repository that gets built from a specific snapshot. And so it's just a little more overhead.
Maybe I'll share. I'm actually leaning towards that second option of having lots of repos. And I might explain my thinking, because I imagine we'll have collections of CRDs and reference operators for each of them.
Yes.
And they will be separate. Some of these operators, to answer Vim, your question, what about installing the cluster? I imagine some of these operators will be running on the workload cluster, some of them on the management cluster.
Yes.
And in some cases, they will be working together, even maybe on the same custom resource. One part of it will be read here and what part of it. So it's the bifurcation that I keep talking about. So yeah, I do think they should be separate, because I imagine we'll have different engineers working on different ones. And at the end of the day, there will be building blocks. You can install certain operators, you cannot install other.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume, like any project in the world, not all of our code will be perfect and useful for everybody. So some users of Nephio might say, yeah, they want to download the demo that will include as many parts as possible. But I imagine that consumers of Nephio will pick and choose. There'll be some operators that are very useful for them and will be part of their project. Some won't. And I imagine that, even some network functions in the future might package some of these operators in them, right, to be more self-orchestrating. We see that also already that, a network function can come with the operators that it needs. Or it can put them, say, on the platform side, and then the platform admins would take from this project what they need to take. So I am in favor of multiple repos. Again, Unix philosophy.
That makes sense. I mean, that makes sense to me. I think that definitely people will be consuming different parts, like you said, and some of the we talked in the past about making things loosely coupled, right? Like, I should be able to consume the part that distributes network functions across a set of clusters without consuming the part that actually creates those clusters. So in that sense, it will be simpler from a consumption standpoint if they're in separate repositories. Where it gets a little bit trickier is around the APIs, the CRDs themselves. So they're going to be in different groups, API groups in Kubernetes terms, which is sort of just like a namespace. Effectively, namespace has a separate meaning, but it's like in Java, you put the package name, right? It's just a way to. I don't know how familiar everybody is with Kubernetes, so it's a little hard to know. But yeah, so they'd be in different groups. Those groups then could live in different repos. It just means that there's likely to be. I mean, maybe that's just fine. There's likely to be cross-pollination across of those, right? Like there's gonna be certain types that are gonna be consumed. And if you break it into a bunch of repos, we have to be careful we don't create circular dependencies. So around the API imports. So that would be probably my only concern about breaking them up. And that just comes down to properly breaking them up. So like there's going to be some core set of Nephio automation APIs that multiple controllers in different areas may share. Obviously, then you can't have a dependency back down the other way.
Prakash, I would say that you can keep the core API as common in a repository, and then have that extension, additional extensions per project in a different way, so that, or otherwise TSC should approve that this is a core and that should be put in a core, so that people can use that as a core for all the kube control extensions and all that, whatever extensions we need to.
Right. Yeah, so that's possibly, I tend to be, maybe this is just my mental model for the community is different. Like, to me, the TSC isn't going to have a clue about any of this stuff.
No.
It's way too
But yeah.
detailed. But somebody, probably you're right, Prakash, needs to make a decision about what ends up in core. I guess that would just be SIG automation, probably.
So you can make the architectural group responsible for the API. That way, it will make sure that it is usable by the.
So I'm trying to separate out, like, structurally. There's a reason we call it network architecture and not just architecture. It's because we want the participants in that to be focused on the requirement side. We used it when we had platform and automation machinery. Then maybe you could argue certain parts that were sort of core common shared APIs would be part of platform and the rest would be part of automation. I think it's code level things are likely to live in SIG automation for the time being, just because I don't think the software engineers are the network engineers that are the primary participants in the network architecture group are going to have, and the TSC aren't going to have the software engineering perspective. And that's, I think, living more in the SIG automation. Prakash?
Yeah, I would have an architectural review board that will approve the APIs. That way, anybody can float anything, but then if it is not approved, they have to fix it. Whatever.
Yeah, we do that. We do something like that. I agree. We're going to need something like that at some point. We do something like that in Kubernetes. We have API reviewers, and there's a handful of people that basically have to approve all the APIs that go through and use that Kubernetes.io group. So we're going to need to do something similar where we have a handful of people who are able to approve the Nephio.io. I think we're so early right now, and they're all V1, Alpha 1, and they're going to change. But you're right, we will need that.
So I just wanted to point a technical issue, because the one repo versus many. If we are going to be standardizing on Golang, and that decision also hasn't been completely made yet. Go has a very specific ways in which it uses GitHub or Git repositories for its libraries and versioning. I mean, there are ways around it. You can definitely have subdirectories with things, but there's a Go way of doing things. And so sometimes that really creates a technical necessity to have multiple repos. I think we should discuss it as it goes along too. I know, for example, the Nephio packages that you created now, you said contains KPT packages, but we might want to have a Nephio library repo, which has a bunch of code that's shared and important by other libraries. And that's where we get to the potential of like dependency loops that you said that we should avoid. Anyway, I feel like this, to give just a meta statement about this SIG, we're kind of blocked, right? This SIG, the reason why we don't have an agenda right now is that this SIG can't really do much until the other SIGs start moving ahead. There's nothing to release unless there's any kind of code. So we'll probably have shorter meetings, just really just talking abstractly until we actually have some real stuff to work with.
Yeah, I think that there are a few decisions that could be made quickly, but maybe not today since we don't have our chair. Like, do we use GitHub Actions and code owners? Do we use something like Prow? Is there some other CI tool? Like, I don't have a strong opinion on any of that personally. I think Shubin put together some a list of a few things, a few options, but I think we probably need some analysis done on those options of why one might be better than the other. Or we just start with something and then see how it goes, and then change it if we need to later.
Yeah.
So, but
Mhm.
I agree.
I agree. Yeah, I think meanwhile we are waiting for the code, we can do the CI/CD, the tours selection, and also the architecture. Like we use like Jenkins or Power, or and also for the any log, do we use Nexus 3, the server to post the log, and the whole process of the CI, how to submit the code, the patch, and we need to show clearly a process of a CI/CD to the community, so they can use this to do their code and for any patches.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, okay, well, maybe if we, if somebody, do we have a volunteer to write up more analysis on the different options around CI/CD and put something together on the wiki?
Well, our potential co-chair, Tina, is up for election.
Right.
This is an opportunity to to demonstrate her thinking about leading this group.
Yeah, thank you, Tao. I have already done this for many years in the Alpha Edge, and I would like to discuss with Stephen when he's back to show what we have done, the experience, best practice in Alpha Edge, to see anything we can leverage here.
Okay, sounds great. You have Steven's contact info?
And not sure.
Okay.
The email, right? The email he sent out, the Google email.
Yeah, I think it's yeah.
Is there any better way than the
No,
email?
that's the best way to get hold of him. I mean,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
that's all I meant. You have his email.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's in vacation, right? I don't want to disturb him.
Yeah, I don't know when he's. I mean, you can email him. He won't. Hopefully, won't look at it. I think he's back tomorrow or the next day. So I don't think he's gone.
Okay, perfect. I'll shoot him an email.
So. All right. If there's nothing else, I'm all set here. Okay. Awesome. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.